interesting to hear. It really, um, I think it's like an inspiration to some of us. So this person grew up in Washington, D.C. He attended the Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, earning a degree in genetics. He went to medical school at the College of Human Medicine at Michigan State University in East Lansing. He's a board certified in family medicine from the University of Utah and has practiced emergency medicine in critical access facilities throughout the nation. He also completed his MBA at the Eccles School of Business in 2020, that is in the U of U. He also served in the U.S. Army as a battalion and brigade surgeon for 7 years in Operation Iraqi and Enduring Freedom. And he states that it's one of the most impactful times of his life as a physician. In 2021, he established the Black Physicians of Utah to improve healthcare outcomes for Black and underrepresented Utahns by increasing the number of Black physicians in the state and through multiple health education initiatives. Currently, he works as the Chief Medical Officer for Health Choice Utah and has completed over 41 triathlons and enjoys watching football with family and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, without much ado and with a standing ovation, let us welcome Dr. Richard Ferguson.
Thank you. I think this might be good. All right. Hello. Okay. I'm good. All right. Well, I think we're still. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's still good morning. So thank you for that introduction. I'm hoping I can add one more triathlon to that in the next couple weeks. So I'm here to talk about and just let me know when the slides are cued. Are they going to show in front of me or? Okay. Awesome. So what I want to talk to you as a community about is particularly colorectal cancer. Now, it is something that particularly impacts a lot of not only our Black community, but particularly our Black men. And what I want to discuss and disclose, I feel like if I just stayed maybe this side. So what I would want to discuss and disclose is what are the benefits of getting screened early, getting screened regularly, but more importantly, what is involved with screening, what is involved with testing, and also there's a particular newer form of testing that can protect us even earlier in diagnosing or showing if we are at risk. And so that's what I'm going to go through a little bit today. Way I often do many of my presentations, particularly to congregations, I like a little bit of engagement. So if there is a question, feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand. I will definitely answer. Or if you want to hold to the end, that's also fine. All right, let's get started here. So, cancer of the colon or rectum is colorectal cancer. So that means all the way from pretty much the anus all the way up to you have your transverse colon going into even the small intestines, but primarily our larger bowel. What I want people to understand here is what are risks for colorectal cancer. So when it comes to risk, it's third most common cause, men and women. So that's more frequent than you realize. And it often tends to happen, those at lifetime risk is like 1 in 24. So that means someone here in this room, if not already impacted by colorectal cancer, they have a family member that's been impacted, or someone here in this room will in their lifetime be impacted by colorectal cancer. It is that common. Second most common cause of cancer death, and as I said, 1 in 24. And it's typically seen in those over 50. But as you'll see as I go into the next slide, it can definitely impact those that are younger. Does anybody know who this is? So this was a I would say, famous black actress that died a few years ago, Adrienne Ellis. And then, of course, we know who Chadwick Boseman is. They were all diagnosed under 50 and died under 50. Okay? So this is not an old person's cancer, is what I want people to understand. And it's impacting many of us as African Americans, those of just West African descent, period, African descent, period. We are, because of health disparities in this nation that we're currently thriving in, the larger impact is if we aren't screened sooner and earlier, we have a higher likelihood of dying from colorectal cancer because we will not be provided definitive care timely enough. And then there's some things that even if we have insurance and we are inclined or we do have the knowledge, it's still making that step to go in there and say, oh, I have to get this uncomfortable exam, which I'll go through here in a little bit. Don't see it as discomfort. I had it done just a little over a year ago, and it was probably one of the faster procedures I ever had. But African Americans are diagnosed at younger age. Colorectal can decrease survival rates, but also we recommend it because we are a higher risk group at 45. It used to be 50 until about 2 years ago, or 2021, so 3 years ago. It used to be at age 50. It's lower now, specifically if you are at higher than average risk, which is pretty much anybody that is of West African descent. So it is preventable. And when I say preventable, what I really want to stress here is that it's one of the most preventable types of cancer besides, say, cervical cancer, which I'm happy to come back and discuss further. But that can be prevented, of course, significantly by a vaccine. This can be prevented with the screening. And I'll go over to the screening here shortly. And particularly is you want to try to remove polyps. And I'll go into describe and, I'm not here to gross anybody else with photos, but we will see endoscopic images of what a polyp looks like, what cancer looks like. But the screening, you take something that is a precancerous lesion, you see maybe 2 of them, you get screened at 45, you get screened at 50, they snap off 2, you wait another 10 years. Because it's slow in development. That is why, and also the bigger thing I'll stress here in a bit, you will not know if you have symptoms at all. It's often without symptoms. I'll put it this way, and mind you, breast cancer is impacting many black women, and if we want to do a comparison, often the reason we get screened is black women should get screened not only because of denser breasts and access to care, and there may be difficulties in attaining treatment, but more importantly, you cannot wait till you have breast pain to know that you have breast cancer. By the time you start having pain and discomfort or weight loss, it's spread throughout your body. Same thing applies with colorectal cancer. So that's why it's important to get screened. So, detectable and preventable, and removing polyps is the key. So what exactly is colorectal cancer? So this is where I go through a little bit of the science part. But it starts as benign, usually not a harmful mass, but that polyp arises from the inner layer of our colon, and if the cells spread from that first layer, they actually tend to spread underneath. So we have a hollow tube, which is our colon, then you have like a little springing out pouching. It's actually beneath it, and it spreads in the inner part of the lining. So it's not going throughout the inside, it's deeper within the colon itself. That's sort of this outpouching, but it's beneath it that's worrisome. What I want people to understand here, it's often a small clump of cells. Many of the clumps are initially harmless, but those harmless ones, if they have abnormal DNA and start replicating more and more, that's why we want to get to it early before it becomes harmful. So why is it so important? So colon polyps do not usually cause symptoms. So that little polyp I showed you there, you won't feel that. You won't have change in bowel habits with that, but it can lead to cancer within 1 to 2 years if you don't get that nipped out. It's important to have regular colorectal cancer screenings, and I'll go through particularly with colonoscopies, but there are certain type of stool tests that we can do. Let me go through this. All right, so one of the powerful tests that we have is actually something called, this is a bit of a game changer. So, I need to in so much. So there, of course, is a risk that is genetic, and then there is risk from our environment. So there are certain foods that we eat that largely causes inflammation in our colon that leads to the increased likelihood of abnormal replication of the cells in our colon. That's how the cancer starts. So if we eat often foods that are highly inflammatory or take a long time to digest, does anybody have an idea of a certain food that would take a long time to digest? Did someone say steak? That's right, red meat. It causes a significant amount of inflammation in our colon. Now, mind you, many of us may have vegetarian diets, but sometimes we love that red meat. We love that burger in the summer. Some people will love to have some bacon. All of that is increased inflammation in our colon. And that will lead to increased cellular turnover, and eventually those cells are going to make a mistake. And when they start to make a mistake, they become a polyp. And then it's a polyp that's made a mistake, and then it starts to eat. That cancer starts to grow in the inner lining of our colon. So the thing is, there are some, though, cancers, colorectal cancers, that are inherited. They're from our parents. They're from our grandparents. And it's in a small number of genes, particularly in a condition called Lynch syndrome. And what I wanted to go through here is hereditary cancers. It's a genetic test, particularly my risk here, that if you are at higher risk for developing cancer due to a certain type of genetic change, that may have been passed on through your family. So all I wanted to show here, if I don't know if it shows on the screen, is if you have colorectal cancer, there's a certain type, Lynch syndrome here. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. That causes about 5 to 10% of colon cancer. Meaning, out of those that are being diagnosed even today, about 10% of those could have been detectable with a test early on in life. We're talking even getting it at your 20s. Meaning you can get screened to see if you have the genes that contain the mutations that are going to put you at risk, to see if you're a part of that 5 to 10% risk. That's clearly preventable. Meaning you could say, you could find out by having your mom, yourself, or your dad with a simple test that was, I showed a little bit earlier with, it's called MyRisk. And I'll go through this, and actually this test can screen for a number of cancers. All right, we're going on. That's just to wake you up in case you were getting sleepy. All right, don't worry, we're more than halfway. So the only thing I want people to understand from this slide is there are major hereditary colon cancer syndromes, particularly Lynch syndrome. It leads to a bunch of little polyps forming in our colon. And if you are aware that you possess the mutation because it's passed down from a relative, you have access now to earlier screening, meaning you don't want to end up like Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick Boseman was too young, based on our current screening guidelines, to even be picked up. You know, so it was at 30, he was 37 when he was diagnosed. Who would have been screening a black man in his 30s for colorectal cancer? But Lynch syndrome, if he had a test at 31, 32, he could have been getting regular colonoscopies about every 2 to 3 years to make sure he didn't have any polyps, snipping away anything that was precancerous or concerning. There's also the ability that you can be on certain chemotherapeutic agents that someone will just have you take that's preventative for growing further polyps. All of this can occur if you have the knowledge from certain genetic tests, particularly the MyRisk hereditary cancer test. Mind you, this will only predict if you have the genetically linked colorectal cancer, not the one that's going to come from smoking, poor diet, eating tons of red meat, and putting carcinogens in your body. It won't detect that because that's something that we, as with lifestyle change, can do more to prevent and address. But also, I don't want to, when you have Lynch syndrome, so if you do possess those genes, you actually are at higher risk for other forms of cancer. So you actually, by just having that one single test, you can see if you can prevent others and get screening for not only endometrial, ovarian, and stomach cancer. So, using hereditary cancer tests to reduce colon cancer risk, there are benefits. Particularly, it gives increased surveillance, not only for colon, but uterine and ovarian. You can have either earlier surgical management, so that's removing those polyps if you get the colonoscopy, especially if you pop positive for having those mutations in those genes. And then also chemoprevention. It's a risk-reducing medication. There are medications that are similarly used for treating breast cancer to stop recurrence. So this is what it looks like when you're seeing cancerous growth here on the left and removing a polyp. It's as simple as that. You go and you get, so most people are worried about the prep. They don't like the prep. You got to drink that stuff. You get all the gas. It goes quickly. It's only a short term. I wouldn't even call it much misery, but a little bit of misery to know that you can live longer. And you can often, and the thing is, it's improved so much that it's often just 2 pills. And yes, you are drinking about 2.25 liters of fluid over about 6 to 8 hours. But once you have that, you can go out feeling with a cool bill of health, like, all right, third leading cause of death in the black community, or third leading cause of cancer death in the black community, I'm cleared. I'm cleared for another 5 years. I'm cleared for another 10 years. Wouldn't you want that reassurance? Especially if you're covered. If you're not covered, there are state vouchers that can assist you in getting a colonoscopy covered, which I can discuss later. So these are the factors that can increase one's risk. So I want us to particularly focus on those that some of you may be committing today that are increasing your risk. So family history of colorectal cancer. You can't do anything about that. You can't change who you were born from. But we can change and detect if those genes we possess. Next, family history of adenomas. Once again, that's a little bit more closely linked to the genetics. Cigarette smoking. Hopefully not many smokers in our audience. This is actually one of the states that has the lowest rate of smoking. Obesity, having your gallbladder removed, physical inactivity. So when we actually exercise, we increase protective chemicals in our body to reduce inflammation. It carries away impurities. It keeps our heart healthy. It helps us to process our liver better, our kidneys better when we exercise. So it helps to bring away more products that be causing abnormal growth or leading to inflammation to lead to abnormal growth in our colon. And abnormal radiation exposure. And if you have an inflammatory condition, so if you have Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, people that are kind of pooping blood a lot and they just have an inflammatory disorder that's at their baseline. Even those with celiac disease, so that gluten allergy, so if they're exposed to gluten too much, they're constantly getting inflammation, swelling in their colon. Once again, it causes changes that the cells have to keep getting replaced and they turn over. And then let's not forget African American race. That is why I'm talking to you here today, because some of us we don't feel that we can do anything more to change our health or improve our healthcare outcomes, but we can. And it always doesn't have to start with the colonoscopy. It can be with a simple blood test if you're under 40. It can be with a simple stool test that you then send in. And if it's negative, you got 3 years. You can wait the colonoscopy if you have an aversion to it. So, signs and symptoms. Most early, and I can't emphasize this enough, most early colorectal cancer produce no symptoms. You won't have gas, you won't have bloating, you won't have any of that. Never ignore new or worrying symptoms though. Mind you, you can look at this and go, well, I had bad Chinese food, can give me any of those. Or someone left something out at a summer picnic for too long, can give me similar symptoms. Yes, if it's acute, likely not. But if this is ongoing for a while, such as abdominal pain, unexpected weight loss, a new anemia, new fatigue, and changes in your bowel habits or change in the shape of your stool. Now, if you're getting changes in the shape of your stool, like if it looks oblongated or hooked in the middle, that means you have a large mass in your colon that's changing the shape. That's a very late sign, okay? So I just want people to be aware of that. Don't start taking pictures of stool tonight and sending it to your doctor. That's not what I want you to do. But reach out to your healthcare provider if you have any symptoms, regardless of age. Because remember, it's happening to those under 50. And what if no symptoms? Get screened. So screening means getting checked even when you have no symptoms. And I'm going to go through types of screening. So step 1 is often colonoscopy. You can start just there and just give yourself that 10-year pass if you're negative. If you have some polyps, they may have you come back in 5 years. If there are multiple polyps, meaning it's more than 1 or 2, they may have you come back and get screened in 2 to 3 years. But at least you checked. And then there's stool-based tests, and that's what I'm going to go through here if sometimes there's an aversion to getting a colonoscopy. But just to walk through colonoscopy real quick, it looks through 4 polyps in your entire colon and rectum. the most common GI procedure done, and I wouldn't be surprised if a GI clinic, someone that specializes in wanting to do colonoscopies all day, they can go through something, about 30 patients, just one doctor, in one day, doing colonoscopies from morning till he's done. He just kind of goes in one room to another after you're prepped. Mind you, sometimes if the prep isn't good, like there's a lot of stool blocking the view of your intestines or your colon, they'll cancel it. And then that means either you sometimes didn't do the prep right or you needed a longer prep, okay? Stool-based test, so this is step 2. So this is something you can do before going on immediately to a colonoscopy. That is, and then this is something that I encourage in areas where there isn't a GI doctor nearby, but you can do something still to screen. So particularly here, test to detect blood or altered DNA, all right? So a positive result, if you detect blood or the DNA, you're going on a colonoscopy. So that's why some people will say, well, why don't I just do the colonoscopy since that's the definitive test? This is for people that say, I may not have coverage with my insurance yet. I might have to pay out of pocket for my colonoscopy, but this test here is a lot cheaper. I can do it every 1 to 3 years and be a little bit more reasonable. So the fecal or FIT test, that detects hidden blood in stool, and it's done annually, and a positive test requires a colonoscopy. Now, mind you, this test I'm not always the biggest fan of, because let's say you have significant amount of internal hemorrhoids, it sometimes can cause this to be positive. Not external, but if it's internal. That's when you get sometimes a false positive. So the thing is, knowing if you have them is beneficial before doing this test. Now, the stool DNA test, Cologuard, this is that little box with the smile that you've seen often that'll be on your YouTube commercials and on TV on the morning news starting next month. It'll be the Cologuard test. Now, this test detects hemoglobin or abnormal DNA, and it's generally indicated 45 to 75 years of age. You can go younger, especially if you have a family history. And it's done every 3 years. So if this is negative, you got 3 years, right? So if you get this done at 45, say, I don't want to do the colonoscopy, I don't want to go through that prep. You can do this, little smear in a card, send it in. If it's negative, you're good to go. Negative result, you just repeat in 3 years. But if it's positive, what are you doing? You're getting a colonoscopy. So, and these are other alternatives, a little bit more expensive. Sometimes you have to fail a colonoscopy or prove you can't do the FIT test or the Cologuard before getting this done. And that is a CT colonography. It's not as sensitive. And then actually there's a little capsule where it has a little camera. So you have to do the prep, but no one actually goes through your rectum with a large scope. You swallow this and it takes images of your colon. Mind you, it's not going to be as accurate as someone literally in your rectum with a camera spinning around, but it can do pretty well, especially if someone has an aversion or they're not able to go through the procedure. And then these are just kind of going over some of the screening guidelines, 45 to 75. So the reason some things stop at 75 is just do people also know here that's when breast cancer screening stops as well. Some will say 70, but it's often 75. The reason why is, what's the number one killer of all Americans? Not all at once. Heart disease. So when you're over 75, cancer is not your highest risk anymore. That's why you don't keep getting screened. So if you're like, hey, grandma, you're 81, why have you not gotten your colonoscopy again? She may say, well, I've had 3 negative ones and I'm 80. I don't need them anymore. Colonoscopy and FIT recommended as the primary methods for screening. Decision to continue screening beyond 75 is personalized. So if you're someone that, say, was positive with polyps at 70, then you probably still need to get screened because you're still at high risk. And then how to arrange, generally you would ask your doctor to be referred to a gastroenterologist. The general will not be able to do this. Some are trained, some family medicine docs, I'll take that away, in critical areas. So OB-GYN, general surgeons, some internists will get specialized training. Oh, that's my cue. All right. And I will speed it up here. And this I will make sure that it's a larger scannable code. And it's also on our website, so which we'll go to next year. But thank you. Questions? There's a quick survey if anybody has their phone on them. And if you want to learn more about BPOU, that is good. But any questions for me that we may have? Anything even about BPOU? Happy to answer any. And I'll be here at the back as well. Yes. Yes. So I think I'll repeat it. How do you get the MyRisk test? So actually, you can go to your doctor and just ask for it. The other thing is you can request it. The company Myriad will send you the test collection kit. It's just a saliva swab. And so actually what I want to do here with this community is to arrange for, if anyone wants that hereditary cancer screening test, we will make it available here probably in June, so the next quarter. And all it is a simple saliva test. They will then collect all those samples, and then they will either see if your insurance will cover it, or they will give you a voucher or to address how you can direct pay. The test is majority of the time covered by insurance, but if you aren't covered, Myriad will help. And so it's something as simple as a saliva swab to know if you are at risk for the genetic or hereditary form of certain cancers: ovarian, endometrial, colorectal, lung, breast. It can start with that initial screening. So yes, but if you go to Myriad Genetics and just type that in on your phone or when you get home, and you just type in MyRisk, that's one way you can order it yourself. But bring it up with your provider. Now, mind you, urgent care ER is not going to order this for you because they want to know who's going to follow up the result. We as BPOU aren't staffed well enough to follow up results for everyone yet. We'll hope to get there, especially if we, say, did a collection of a study all at one time. But I think it's knowing do you have access to someone that can set you up for that? Okay, sorry. Good question. But yeah, Pastor Ojo will let you know more about when we come back for the sample test.
Can you tell us more about BPOU?
Oh, BPOU? Oh,
and
yes.
To include how you can help with people without insurance.
Oh, okay.
Do you provide any medical service or?
So that's a great question. And yes, it's people are like, oh, it's a black physician group. Why do we not? So I don't know if it might be helpful. Miss Ojo in the back, if you could bring up our website, if you just kind of cancel out the PowerPoint, put in bpou.org, it'll be a lot faster to explain some of our niche. So we are an organization that is based kind of on 4 tenets. So we realize that representation and trust in the black and marginalized communities in Utah are increased when you are receiving care or education from someone that looks like you. So that's one thing is I'm trying, our primary motivation is to create more black doctors. So we're going to our black youth to get them the skills and preparation so they can be admitted into med school and practice in Utah. That's one thing. The other thing is to keep the black doctors that are currently here. We lose 1 or 2 every year. They don't die, they're just leaving, okay? So we want to retain. I've been here over 10 years. I think it's a good place for black doctors to thrive. But if they feel like they're the only physician of color in an all-white space, and they don't feel support from other black peers, they're more likely to leave and go to Dallas or Houston. One of our black psychiatrists, last year, she was here barely 9 months, didn't receive the best treatment up in Davis County, and she went back to Texas, where she had a larger community of black physicians around her. We did our best to retain. The other thing is community education and awareness initiatives. We feel that knowledge is power, and we want to do a lot for advocacy, self-empowerment. The other thing is we have a mental health arm. So that's where we actually can cover more services if you're uninsured, because that's a little bit easier to do. So if you go to our mental health resource tab, I don't know if you wanted to click on that. Were you sharing my page there a minute? So go on the top. scroll up a little bit. You see where it says community resource? Go to mental resource tab. There you go. Click on that. So if you go to that, hopefully it brings it up here. Did it go through? There we go. So if you scroll down, not only do we have mental health forums, but if you go to our financial assistant for mental health, we can assist with counseling for up to about 6 to 8 sessions. So this is for someone that's underinsured or not insured at all. And you don't have to be in crisis, but loneliness, depression is underdiagnosed in our community, and they're stigmatized a lot. So we have created a whole mental health committee where we're doing multiple events almost every week. We just did one yesterday at Black Excellence at the Quinney Law School at the U. And then I think we have another event on March 20th. All of this is on our calendar on the homepage of our website. So we can help with that, but we don't have the liability, so we don't have like a clinic. We are not a organization that has liability or malpractice insurance to provide care. We can advise, we can direct, and then we can get you to a resource if someone is underinsured or not insured at all, and we can direct you to something that's trusted, vetted, where we feel you'll receive competent care. But we don't have the means to cover care. We don't have the ability to directly see us as providers. Many of the Black doctors here, if you're not aware, especially even with our health provider, Sandra, that I met here a bit earlier, you can't directly go and see many of us. You can't see me, right? Even though I practice emergency medicine out of state. But my day job is actually I'm the chief doctor for a health insurance plan. So I'm on the payer side. I'm someone that approves the paying of services when someone is insured. So it would be very hard to come see me. We used to have one Black primary care physician, Dr. Erica Baden. She is now taking care of a special population through the intensive outpatient clinic with the U. But there's only about, we estimate, not everyone is a part of BPOU, but there's about 38, 43 Black physicians in the state. That's